Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm going to just give it another 10, 15 seconds or so to let everybody get into the room, and then we will begin. All right. So I'm going to start off this process. First, I want to introduce myself. I'm Michelle Higgins, work at AvidXchange and CoreNet member. Want to start off the meeting by a little housekeeping. Please keep yourself on mute. Use chat function for any questions, and session will be recorded and chapter will share after the event. So these are really important things to know. Mute is hugely important. Just remember to take yourself off mute when we do open up for a physical conversation. Anyways, I wanted to thank the sponsors. So we're going to start with our diamond sponsors: CBRE, DPR Construction, JLL, all of our annual sponsors, as well as our event sponsors. So our event sponsor today is CBRE, and CBRE is a proud sponsor of the annual Winning Carolinas CoreNet chapter. CBRE is the world's largest commercial real estate service and investment firm with 2019 revenues of $24 billion and more than 100,000 employees globally. In the Carolinas alone, CBRE have more than 900 professionals who have local expertise in nearly every industry, from banking, retail, healthcare, life sciences, data centers, logistics, and manufacturing, to provide specific expertise and advice that enables their clients to develop, manage, and exceed organizational goals for their real estate portfolio. Their clients include 95% of the Fortune 100, including Carolinas-based clients like Bank of America, Truist Financial, Wells Fargo, Electrolux, and Reynolds American. Other global clients we represent who have a significant presence in the Carolina include Microsoft, Amazon, AT&T, GlaxoSmithKline, and many others. CBRE would greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about how CBRE can bring real advantage to your business through the real estate and investment services we offer. With all of that said, I'd also like to review with everybody upcoming events for CoreNet. October 8th, virtual building tour and real estate strategy discussion, and users in Triangle Market will walk through newly constructed offices space virtually. November 5th, virtual core awards taking place. Registration will open Monday, October 5th. Make sure to sign up, guys, for both of these. They're really going to be awesome and epic. We're really on a time crunch, so at this point, I am going to hand this over to our room monitors and I apologize. I'm going to hand this over to our panelists.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. Wanted to briefly introduce the topic that we're going to go over, and then we'll get into some additional introductions. So the reasoning for this session, in times of great uncertainty, it's imperative that we go deeper. It's not enough these days just to simply ask why. The art of inquiry has the power to uncover hidden paths toward problem resolution or even spark innovation in areas that were previously dominated by the status quo. I see some very friendly faces out on the Zoom call today. Good morning, my name is Chris Lapata. For those of you who I've not had the pleasure to meet, I am a client leader with BHDP Architecture and a Carolinas chapter board member. I'm also a faculty member for the CoreNet certification program, the MCR and SLCR programs. And I'm very excited to be joined today by someone I love to collaborate with, someone who's an amazing thinker, someone who inspired this session. So please welcome Mark Borst. Mark, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. As Chris said, my name is Mark Borst. I am the manager of customer experience strategy for Interface, which is a global modular flooring company you may be familiar with. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, with my wife and 2 cats. And I'm really excited to be with you. I love the Carolinas, and I've actually been to one of your meetings with Chris, and I'm excited to be back with you again today.
Awesome. Thank you. So we had a fast-paced session for you today. Here's a bit of the agenda. We're going to share some resources and some strategies to help you develop your inquiry artistry. You're going to walk away being a much better questioner today. We're going to have a little breakout session that's going to leverage a strategy we're going to cover today. We're going to try to identify as a group 2 key challenges to address. And then we're going to co-create a short list of what Mark and I like to refer to as beautiful questions. Mark's going to dive deeper into that. Something that you might be able to take back to your organization and help to create the future. So our first reference that we want to go through today is from a gentleman by the name of Frank Sesno. Frank is a journalist, former news anchor, currently the director for the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University. He wrote a book called Ask More, The Power of Questions. And he presupposes that what if we ask more and asserted less? Think to yourselves, what if we asked more and we're less concerned about sharing how much we know? What would we discover, and how much better would we understand the people and the world around us? And in the book, he identifies some very key question types that we're going to cover off on really quickly. He talked about strategic questions, the fact that the future is on the line. We're in a really strange time right now. We have to reinvent the future. Empathy questions. How can we go deeper? How can we find out what makes people tick? Bridging questions, getting people talking. This could be as simple as asking someone you meet, hey, those are fantastic shoes. Where did you get them? I mean, think about how easy it is to get people talking. Creativity questions, encouraging others to think beyond the familiar, having people get out of their familiar way of life and asking them questions, how they can, rethink the future. One question you might want to ask on a first date or at a cocktail party, you could ask somebody, hey, if you were able to build a time machine and you were able to take yourself 3 to 5 years from now, what does it look like in the future? What are you doing? What are you seeing? What's the future like? Just a way to get somebody out of their comfort zone. The mission question is really all about creating this shared purpose and a common goal. And I think we all are sharing some really common goals these days. We're going to dive deeper into those. Scientific questions, as you all know, hypothesis is if we do X, then Y will happen. Interview questions. This is not only important for the interviewer, but also for the applicant, especially if you're thinking about a job role. Is this a fit between interviewer and applicant? Entertaining questions. How can you spice up a conversation by maybe asking a question that's very provocative? And then lastly, he talks about legacy questions. Are organizations or are people asking themselves, what have we accomplished? Or who have we touched? So for sake of this discussion, we're going to focus on 2 questions. Strategic questions. These can help guide a person or a business. Asking yourselves such things as, does this course of action advance our interests? Can we define what success looks like? And do we have the resources to achieve our goals? Then the next key question for the moment, where we're at right now in time, are the mission questions. How can we use the power of these questions to build a team, clarify our mission, and define some goals? What do you as an individual care about? How might you and I partner to achieve our objectives? And how bold can we be? So before I let Mark turn over this question, this book right here was the impetus for this session. Mark and I, before the pandemic, were able to get together for a cup of coffee, and he handed me this book, and it really kind of inspired this whole session. Mark, do you want to introduce this author?
I sure do. This book was a real game changer for me. When Chris and I get together, there's usually a few sparks that fly at least, but this book really was quite provocative for both of us. I still use it all the time, and I'd highly recommend it. The author, Warren Berger, is a New York Times journalist, a CBS editor and author, and a self-proclaimed questionologist, which I just love. So a number of years ago, I became personally convinced that there was no more business as usual. I'm sure you've all had a similar epiphany at some point or another in the last 5 to 10 years. This book really tapped into that conviction for me. It provides an open-ended, sort of iterative approach aimed at unlocking the power of creative thinking for innovation. And as an experienced designer, that's what I'm all about. It does so not because it provides the right answers, however, it does so because it provides the right questions. So the open-endedness of the book, I think, is one of its greatest strengths. And by the way, you can digest little chunks of it all the way through without reading it cover to cover, which makes it a really useful companion piece. This book assumes a level of comfort with fuzzy edges, of thinking well outside of our personal boxes. So be prepared to be agitated just a bit. Traditional planning and thinking assumes one right answer. Design thinking, as we understand it, iterates toward a better answer, starting with the question why, and moving us toward uncovering new solutions to problems, maybe even some we didn't know we had. This book is a roadmap for that kind of thinking, and it also will help hone your critical thinking skills. I don't know if you can see it from the slide here, but the subtitle of the book is Powerful Questions That Will Help You Decide, Create, Connect, and Lead. Those are all transformative verbs, and we'll do a quick deep dive into each one of them here in a moment. So how do powerful questions help us decide? Good decision-making demands critical thinking, which is rooted in questioning. Critical thinking itself is in crisis. Berger asks, how do we make enlightened judgments and choices in an era of growing collective inability to distinguish fact from fiction or fake news from the real thing? How about connectivity? It's fundamental, he says, to innovation and fresh thinking. What if we go looking for problems? How do we get unstuck? Connecting with others can be improved dramatically by asking more questions. And there's actually new research that suggests that we become more likable to others by asking the right questions. As for leadership, Berger says, it's becoming increasingly clear that the best leaders are those with the confidence and humility. And you may notice a thread here already of continuity between what he's talking about in Cessno's content. So the confidence and humility to ask the ambitious and unexpected questions that no one else is asking.
Yeah, Mark, I really love that context you put in around those connecting questions. I think there are a lot of consultants on the Zoom call today, and there are a lot of people that have internal clients as well. And we all like to be liked, right? And I think that simple task of asking a good question helps with that personal connectivity. So thanks for sharing that point.
Absolutely. So here are what Berger calls the 5 enemies of questioning. So as we tick through these, think about how these 5 enemies of questioning might manifest themselves in, dare I say it, your personal life, your relationships, your vocation, and your organization. So, you know, our education system is mostly test-driven and answer-based. I think we can all agree. So is it any wonder that we might have a fear about not knowing the answer? Or maybe exposing not knowing how to do our job or disappointing a work partner. As for knowledge, the more you know, the less you feel you need to ask, right? So how do we expand and update our knowledge? Berger has a warning: beware of answers dressed up as certainties. Bias and hubris are related to each other. Some biases are hardwired in us, and we spend a lifetime trying to undo them. As for hubris, Berger suggests there's an interesting relationship between questioning and humility. There's that word again, it keeps popping up. We can ask ourselves, would I rather be right or would I rather understand? And then finally, time. We don't make time for questionings. Again, it starts in school. Ask any teacher these days. It takes so much time to download, there's no time for questions. And those of you who are homeschooling your kids right now certainly know what we're talking about. As our lives move faster and have become more complicated, little time is left or allotted for inquiry, contemplation, and critical thinking. We're under pressure to make quick decisions and render snap judgments and do without having the opportunity to ask the question, why? And then finally, on this page, why is questioning now more important than ever? This may be the crux of why we're all gathered here together as we start talking about what our future looks like. Berger says, in a time of exponential change, Questioning skills are a 21st century survival kit. Now more than ever, we have to rethink almost everything we're doing. Questioning is more important than ever because organizations, like we individuals, must keep inquiring and learning in order to survive and prosper. We're acutely aware of that right now. The right questions are propulsive. I love that word. The right questions propel us forward as opposed to slowing things down or paralyzing us with doubt. Elie Wiesel wisely stated, people are united by questions. It's the answers that divide them. So questions have the power to bridge the gaps between us, perhaps in the COVID era more than ever, as we question our way to the next normal. So what are the characteristics of those of us who can earn the title of beautiful questioner? These are the ones that are suggested by Berger, and let's just go through them very quickly. Am I willing to be seen as naive? I think most of us would answer that question with a resounding no, but he asserts that it's important to be bold enough to ask. Am I comfortable raising questions with no immediate answer? The trick here is to become comfortable living with questions. As I mentioned earlier, a fundamental aspect of design thinking methodologies is that you don't assume one right answer. Rather, you move back and forth between the abstract and the particular, and you iterate toward a better answer. So how do we train ourselves to do this? How do we go outside of our own bubble? It's by asking the right questions. Moving away from what I know. That may involve admitting we were wrong. So that probably falls into that am I willing to be seen as naive category. And remember, the more we think we know, the less likely we are likely to ask questions. So we're now back to that humble leadership thing again. So what role do biases play in our strategy and business approach? And then finally, am I willing to slow down and consider? It's a matter of being willing, but it's also a matter of making it a priority to make time for things that matter. So what do beautiful questions look like? And I think maybe the easiest overall description would be that they open up possibilities. So he gives a lot of guidelines, Berger does, in this book about how to do that. And I want to just run you through a few of those very quickly. And I just ask you to bear with me and sort of listen in. We didn't want to pollute visually this slide with all kinds of words. So I'm going to share some things with you verbally. So first of all, how can I open up the question to be decided? And again, bear with me. Berger talks about non-binary open-ended questions. So what does that mean? It means binary is a simple yes or no. It gives you like one option. Non-binary doesn't restrict us to that sort of linear thinking. So a couple of ways to start questions that help open up a non-binary question are, what are the best ways, fill in the blank, or how might I, fill in the blank. Let me give you two quick examples. Here's an easy binary closed question. And by the way, that's our default. We tend to go here first. So here's the question. Given the problems I'm having with my boss, should I quit my job? Yes or no? All right, here's the non-binary, slightly more difficult open-ended question. I'm having problems with my boss at work. How might I address that? So I think you get the point. Looking at the great, the good, and the ugly, Berger talks about three outcomes or scenarios. If you can imagine these, one is very positive, one is moderate, and one is ugly. I'll give you three examples. Let's suppose you're a branch bank. Here is your positive question or statement. We could open a new branch. Here's your moderate one. We could expand, but do so within our existing branches. And here's your ugly one. We could decide not to expand. Here's another one, and I love this because it really forces you to think open-endedly. What is the counterintuitive choice? So include one option that goes completely against all the others. You probably won't choose it, but it'll stimulate some pretty unconventional thinking. And then what would an outsider do? So earlier, Chris referenced to Cessno's ideas about empathy questions. I use empathy mapping also as a way to take a questioning methodology to get at customer insight. So what would an outsider do? Can you step outside and look back in? And that should yield some insight as well. A few examples of types of questions. Creativity questions, some of my personal favorites, because I am a creative. I'm a resolute right brain thinker and I can't help it. Find your big idea. Here's the questions. What stirs me? What bugs me? What's missing? What do I keep coming back to? And my personal favorite, What is ripe for reinvention? So a way that you can sort of reframe that question, one of the powerful things you can do with that question or others is to use it to temporarily shift reality. Here's a question that can do that. What would I try if I knew I could not fail?
Yeah,
And then the next, go ahead.
these are great, Mark. I mean, I don't know if anyone on the Zoom call ever takes time to ask these really simple questions of themselves, but it's hard. It goes back to slowing down, right, Mark?
It absolutely does.
And figuring out what bugs me. I think if people just sat down and talked about these things, what stirs me, what bugs me, what's missing, I think there's great opportunities for reinvention.
Well, I'll just say that I use those questions once in a while when I have the relentless return of my Monday morning check-in with my team. They're really helpful to stimulate a little thinking about what can we do this week that might be different. So here's a set of questions designed for organizational leadership. And I love all these equally. They're all my children. Let's just go through them here real quickly. If we disappear, this can be an organization or you can be you personally as a leader. If we disappeared tomorrow, who would miss us? What do we do that others can't or won't? How might we be not just a company, but a cause? I love this one. And one of the reasons I joined Interface is because they're a company, but they're also a cause. Interface started way back in 1994, and they were obsessed with one thing. So our founder, Ray Anderson, wanted to become a net zero carbon company by the year 2020, and we've actually reached that goal. We are still obsessed with sustainability and will continue to be so. And all of that's apparent in our tagline, which is leading industry to love the world. Of course, as a right-brainer, anybody that has the word love in their tagline gets my vote. But that next question, I think, is an amazing one. So Chris talked about mission questions. Vision question is a different thing. Most of us are familiar with vision statements, but Berger turns that on its head and says, what is our vision question? So now if I take leading industry to love the world and change it to a question, what does that sound like? What must we do to better lead industry to love the world? It changes it up and keeps and it sparks an open-ended conversation. How can we become the company that would put us out of business? And finally, how might I make tomorrow visible? Here's where we get back to that next normal thing again, everyone. Many organizations today, we all are struggling with this question. And the question a lot of our customers are struggling with, and I suspect you are as well, is how long is temporary? None of us really know this stage we're in, right? How permanent is this COVID-driven pivot that we're in the middle of? So how might we make tomorrow visible? Here's another provocative question that may help. Ask yourself, what would future me decide? Can you project yourself to the other side of all of this and look back? So hopefully those will help stimulate your thinking about ways to move things forward. That's the essence of my book report. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Turn it back over to Chris, who's going to lead us into another resource and a questioning exercise.
Yeah, I just love to see a show of hands or a head nod. I mean, has anybody asked themselves, what if we disappeared tomorrow? Who would miss us? Or how can we become the company that would put ourselves out of business? I mean, these are some tough questions that any organization can be challenged to answer. Thank you, Mark. So the last reference, before we get into our breakout, the last reference point we wanted to offer up was from this gentleman, Hal Gregersen, who is the executive director of the MIT Leadership Center. He's an author, he's a motivational speaker, he's a professor, and he's dedicated his life to this core questioning philosophy that you see on the screen. What if you could unlock a better answer to your most challenging problem simply by changing the question? So he concludes that if we never stop questioning, we never risk losing our childlike sense of wonder and our power to be a disruptor, our power to change the status quo. And recently he wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review. The article was entitled Better Brainstorming. And he introduced this concept of the question burst. He was teaching an MBA class at MIT and trying to lead a brainstorming session. And if you've ever been involved in the brainstorming session, they can be pretty tedious. He described that session as wading through oatmeal. And I don't know if you ever tried to walk through oatmeal. I never have, but it sounds hard. So he was trying to, with the class, they were trying to address a really important topic to many organizations. And it was really how to build a culture of equality in a male-dominant environment. Whew. The class was about to fall asleep. Low energy, staring at the clock. And he said, let's forget about trying to find the answers. Let's come up with as many questions as we can in the time we have left. And all of a sudden, students sat up, they were energized. They're like, all right, let's get after this. So he poses that the question burst is really about creative discovery through open and honest inquiry. And it's all about fresh questions that can lead to novel and transformative insights. And the goal is trying to make this simple and repeatable. And we're going to try to walk you through this method and see if we can't get through it together. He leads us through the steps to developing a question burst scenario and experience. First, you have to set the stage. So when doing this question burst exercise, set the stage. He said, select a challenge that you care about deeply. And I know what you're saying to yourself. You're saying, Chris, what the hell? How do I identify those challenges that I care about deeply? And Gregerson says, does it make your heart beat faster? Or when you think about it for a little bit, do you get a little bit angry? So those are the challenges that I think we need to try to identify. The next stage of setting the stage is, can we invite others to help you consider different perspectives? We know that when we ask others to participate, we kind of make ourselves vulnerable by sharing the problem that we have. But I think we've all experienced this. When you ask somebody to help, you're summoning empathy, which fosters idea generation. And we know that in the first step of design thinking, empathy can help us really to develop some great questions. So the goal is to include 2 or 3 people, bring them into the room that have no direct experience with the problem. Those with a different worldview. You know, these are the people that will point out the elephant in the room or ask those third rail questions. And if you're from Chicago and you step on the third rail of the L train, you know exactly what happens. You get a shock, you get jolted. So those are the kinds of people. This is really different than traditional brainstorming, which can create anxiety. That's why people don't want to share in brainstorms. The question burst is designed to create a safe space. And it suspends the rush or the need to find answers because we know there's pressure there. So the goal of the person leading the question burst, and hopefully this will be you someday, in 2 minutes at a very high level, lay out the problem. Talk about the problem. Talk about the impacts to the problem. But you need to share how things will change for the better if you solve the problem. So that's a big step. The next step that Gregerson points out is that not all questions are created equal. People often ask, you know, what kinds of questions are you looking for in a question burst? And I think Mark and I would agree, we're looking for beautiful questions, right? The ones that are open-ended, the ones that don't ask, you know, get a yes/no answer. Really importantly, there are 2 critical rules in this question burst exercise. Number 1, if you're participating, you can only ask questions. If someone gives an answer, they get thrown out of the room. No, just kidding. But you can't give answers. You have to only ask questions, and there can't be any preamble or justification to the question that you're asking. So those are 2 critical rules: no preambles and only questions. The next thing, if you're moderating, is getting a mood check. You know, when you get people in a room and you start to bring up the topic that you're going to solve for, people might feel a little uncomfortable. So you got to figure out where are they in that mood check. And then So that's step one. Step two, again, we're brainstorming only questions, and we're gonna get a scribe to write these down. We're gonna ask a couple people to write down the questions. And the rules, again, short, simple, fresh questions. And the question burst only lasts 4 minutes. There's an emphasis on getting as many questions as you can. The more surprising or provocative the question, the better. There can't be any pushback in the room. And again, no answers are accepted. Now you might be asking, why 4 minutes and why 15 questions? This really is just helping us to focus as a team. And studies show that moderate performance pressures can really kind of boost output. And Gregerson would say that multiple question bursts may help. They're going to help refine, reshape, and kind of solve the problem. So when the timer goes off, we're going to do a second emotion check and ask you how you feel after the question burst. Hopefully you're in a little bit better place. You're a little bit more comfortable with the situation, because we know that creative problem solving really flourishes when people are in a positive state. The next step to a question burst is to identify a quest. Gregerson notes that 80% of the time, this exercise will produce at least one question that helps us reframe the problem and maybe provides us a different angle for coming at the problem. So when you think about a quest, think about these 6 photos. Now I need everybody to go into the chat box. There's going to be a prize. Mark and I get to be the judges. I don't know why. Call me crazy. But we need you to go into the chat box and identify all 6 photos and just write a word about what the quest is. I was thinking about giving you one of the answers, but I'm not going to do that today. So go in the chat box, list out what these pictures show, and a word or two about their quest. We'll give you a minute to kind of go through those and let those sink in. Are we getting any good ones, Michelle?
Not yet. I think he's still typing.
We know there's a quest involved. Got a few more coming in. It's not mandatory. You only have to play if you want the prize. And I know there's some competitive people out there.
Oh, these are great.
There's some creatives out there too, Mark.
Indeed. We're ruling the world right now.
All right, I'm going to leave this up for just about another 10 seconds, so get your answers in. And just to keep it fair, maybe we'll ask Michelle to help us pick who got some of the better answers. All right, so again, Gregerson is saying that in step 3 of the question burst is we have to identify a quest. We've got to select a few of the questions that come out of the question burst that intrigue us or even make us feel uncomfortable. We need to explain them with why questions. Why is that question important? Why is it meaningful? And why does that question matter? And finally, we need to devise a near-term action plan. So what actions will we personally take in the next 3 weeks to find a potential solution? The point is that arriving at challenging questions is essential, but it's not sufficient. An action plan and a follow-up plan can clarify the problem and kind of break open a new pathway to solving that problem. Hope that makes sense. Gregerson also says that we've got to make it a habit. 3 rounds of a 4-minute question burst is not a big time investment. It's going to feel strange at first because this is a muscle that we don't use very often. It's a different muscle. It's out of line with established norms at work and in life. I mean, since childhood, we've all been conditioned to not ask questions, and that's made us afraid of how other people will perceive us. And when we're a student, like when Mark was saying, students are judged by the answers that they give and how good those answers are. But in life, I think most of us know we're not judged by the answers, we're judged by how good our questions are. Gregerson also says that we know about IQ, we know about EQ. He says that by doing this, you can raise your questioning quotient, your QQ. Think about companies like Amazon and Pixar, Tesla, and Google. They built their cultures around asking each other really tough questions. This next one is very, very important. We know that leadership must show humility, vulnerability, trust, equality, and empowerment. We all may have worked in a culture where these elements were not existent, and we know that if these are missing, questions will either be constrained or worse, they'll be crushed. The next effort in making it a habit is to hold each other accountable. Make sure there's a follow-up. There's nothing more annoying. Raise your hand if you've got this colleague. There's nothing more annoying than a colleague who only asks questions and then does nothing. This is especially true for leaders. They need to send a message that this is how we're going to challenge the status quo and really craft the new future. So again, the power of the question burst really lies in the ability to alter a person's view on a challenge. That's one of the big takeaways Mark and I want to share with you today. So we're going to get into some proactive, some collaborative work right now, and we're going to talk a little bit about this guy. We're going to talk a little bit about Bill Gates and his favorite questions when dealing with a difficult challenge. The first thing he wants to know is, who has faced a similar problem and handled it well? The next thing he asks after that is, what can we learn from them? I mean, how simple is that exercise for if you're a leader, if you're leading a team that's charged with solving a problem? So what we would like to do, again, stay in the chat box. We'd love to ask anybody, or if you want to come off mute, feel free to come off mute, but who has a favorite business question that they like to ask? One of my favorites is asking a client, if you have a problem and you have a magic wand, which problem would you make go away? Take that magic wand, wave it in the air. Which problem would you make go away and why? We getting any?
One of my favorites is, where's your pressure coming from?
That's always a good one. Any questions coming in the chat box, Michelle?
Yeah, so one came in that's, what keeps you up at night?
Great one. Great with that. That's open-ended. It's not a yes or no. Do you have problems at work? Yes. But
I have another one I really like related to that, which is, what gets you up in the morning?
Ah,
Nice.
that's way to spin it there, Mark. Any other good ones come in, Michelle?
Yep, so another one came in. What have you done that has been successful? One that I ask a lot, more so on interviews with candidates, is I always ask, what's the one thing that would be listed as development from your previous employer?
Awesome. Yeah, great question. Great question.
And another one came in, what problem are you trying to solve for? And how to tackle the fear of failure?
Oh, yeah, fantastic question. Awesome. Thank you for contributing those. Let's move on. So Mark and I are gonna be choosing some of these challenges. So in one or two words, what are some of the biggest challenges we face today as a human race? And Michelle, I might need you to capture these. I'm gonna see if I can see the chat box without killing my screen. Oh yeah, I killed it. There,
It's
no,
okay.
there it is. There it is. So, what are the biggest challenges we face today as a human race?
Hey, Chris, I want to do a quick time check for you too. It's 11:40.
Oh wow, we're going long. Okay.
So we may have to skip the burst. Let's see.
Well, let's. Did we get any challenges in the human race? Let me see. Divisiveness, equity. All right. Let's do this. Let's take six minutes out of the 10 that we've got left, and let's do let's take the question of health. And Amanda, would you break us up into the rooms? We're gonna need a couple minutes. Let's take the role of health or healthcare question of that, and then bring that into the rooms and let's do a little question burst around that.
Sounds good. I'll put you into the rooms right now.
Thank you. Okay, we're back. I hope you guys were able to rack up a bunch of questions around the biggest challenge that we face as a human race. We had a couple of scribes and people that were willing to capture the questions and report out. We'll start with my group. Allison Volkins from C Design. You captured a couple. Tell us how many we captured and give us a couple of highlights of some of the good ones. You may need to come off mute. Oh, everybody should be back.
We're back.
Yep, excellent. Allison, you out there?
Yes, we had 18 and then I missed 2, so I think we're at 20.
Yeah, strong work, team. Give us a highlight of a couple.
So how do we prevent it in lieu of treating it? Health. How do we take politics out of coverage? How do we ensure healthcare for all? And then how do we help people own their own health journey? How do we educate the young? How do we make it more equitable to people of color?
Yeah. Hey, Allison, we're gonna get the hook pretty quickly, and
Yeah, we got 1 minute left.
I know, and I want to thank everybody for participating in the exercise and going through it. This is the first time we've ever done this virtually. It's been a year of first, and you guys were awesome for attending. I hope there were some good questions that were raised. In the interest of time, we'll go back, make sure there's a call to action. We hope that there's something you can take away from this and apply it to your life and to work. And on behalf of our sponsors, thank you all so much for attending. Kind of a quick wrap up. Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. My joy to be with you all.
Amanda, are we good?
You're good.
We are good. I just wanted to say, kind of echo what Chris just said. Thank you very much for everybody's attendance here. We really appreciate you hopping in on this. We hope you took away as much as I did. And with that said, also thank you very much, Chris and Mark, for such a great session. We really, truly appreciate it.
Oh, thanks everybody. Be safe, be well. Thanks for joining.
Great session. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks.